How's it going, guys? I'm Jamie with KaiMinds.com, and we've just checked out Crystal Rift on the virtual reality headset at HTC, and I'm joined with one of the developers. How are you today?
Hello, I'm good, thank you very much.
Right, so I've just checked out Crystal Rift, and how long has it been in development for?
So we've been developing it for about 2 years now. Right. John Hibbins started out on it originally. He'd made it for a few months, and I met him at a VR meetup, showing some of the stuff I was working on. He quite liked what I was doing, and he said, would I like to join him making it? And I did. And yeah, ever since we've been kind of creating the game up to what it is now. We're on early access. It's about 2 hours long at the moment, a bunch of levels, and eventually the whole game's going to be about 6 hours long. Lots of content, that kind of stuff, and yeah, it's been good. And I mean, we're kind of really happy. I mean, to get to the stage where we feel confident enough to come to EGX and have a stand, and I think the queues are like half an hour and maybe an hour long or something like that. I feel sorry for the people standing in them, but you know, you get to enjoy the game.
Crystal Rift has a very retro feel to it in terms of the dungeon. What inspirations did you take from that?
So yeah, literally a retro feel to it. John, when he started, he wanted it to be like all those old games, Dungeon Keeper, Eye of the Beholder, and I think it's you know, it's that grid movement that kind of captured that kind of feel, as well as obviously all the monsters and the look of it and everything like that. But yeah, the movement that you do, and actually that grid-based movement, the 90-degree turns, all that kind of stuff, works really well for VR as well. VR sometimes, if you have too much movement, too much smooth turning, it can cause motion sickness because your brain doesn't feel what your eyes are seeing. So by having you snap 90 degrees, by having you step forward like a grid space at a time, you can do that in such a way as to kind of avoid motion sickness. And the way we play it is, you know, you can have smooth motion, you can turn smoothly and you can walk smoothly, but we also add options so people can have it staggered, which reduces a lot of that motion, or just instant turning, instant movement, and that avoids any kind of motion sickness type things.
So would you say motion sickness is one of the major concerns you have while making games like it?
Making any VR thing, motion sickness is the biggest primary concern, because effectively it's like just one of those technical things that you want to get right. I think if you were going to, you know, make a racing game, you would want to make sure that it works so that you steer and you don't just crash into walls the whole time. And if you're going to make a beat 'em up or any game, you just want to make sure it works. And I think one of those fundamental technical things is in VR is just to avoid as much sickness as possible. Some games kind of don't do that as much, and that can be okay actually. Yeah. You can have fun games that kind of flout those rules a bit, and that's okay. Our game, I think, does pretty well, especially with the options that we give people to avoid it. But yeah, going back, I mean, those retro games, yeah, it was kind of that's kind of why I joined the game as well, because I saw it was already the way John had it, the way you're walking down corridors. I mean, it was quite bare, there wasn't a lot of content, but the way he had it was already a very fleshed out, fully realized game. And I saw it and I thought that does work for VR, and that looks good for VR, and that's something I quite like to be involved in. So yeah, it's all coalesced quite nicely.
So VR has sort of just boomed in the last couple of years. Do you think there's a problem with oversaturation with VR? I mean, we've got HTC, we've got Oculus Rift, we've got PlayStation VR, we've got HoloLens now, and you've got some of the budget ones. Do you think there's a bit of an oversaturation with that?
Not at the moment. There is not an oversaturation problem. There's only really a few platforms. So you've got the Steam VR platform, which is currently HTC Vive. There'll be others, manufacturers, but HTC Vive, and that's a platform on PC. And then you've got the Oculus Rift platform on PC. And then you've got the PlayStation platform and the Gear VR platform. You know, in consoles, there are like 3 different platforms: Xbox, PlayStation, and Nintendo platforms. All of those coincide quite nicely, and all the mobile platforms. So even though there are quite a lot of other smaller headsets, quite a lot of other technologies, the actual platforms are very healthy currently, and actually there's probably not enough access for people. None of these headsets are released yet as commercial products. Only at the end of this year do they come out and into next year. PlayStation sort of maybe second quarter of next year. And you know, even when they come out, they're only going to be in the million numbers, and it's going to grow a lot. Yeah. There's going to be, you know, in the end of 2016 into 2017 into 2018, it's really going to explode. And I think a lot of people are going to be surprised how big it gets and how quickly it gets. And even then, I say quickly, I mean, it's growing very quickly now, and it's just the trajectory of it, I think, is going to take a few people by surprise. Certainly people who are currently, you know, maybe naysayers, maybe a bit like, you know, oh, this isn't really anything. It's a bit like 3D TV, and I don't think they've either tried it or quite understand what's going to happen. But certainly not oversaturated. That's not a problem currently.
But when I was standing in line, one of your colleagues said that you originally started building it with the Oculus Rift and then you moved over to HTC. Have you developed for both, or is it like literally easy to copy and paste to be able to make it compatible with other devices?
It's really, really easy to go to other devices. And all these, this is what's so great about these companies. They realize they need to make the development of it straightforward. Even PlayStation, getting a PlayStation developer kit is not as straightforward as getting an Oculus headset, but even so, it's not difficult. You can effectively drop in their camera into your game, and barring, you know, technical and certain things you have to do, it effectively works. But to make the most of each VR system, there are certain things you can and should be doing. The Vive headset itself comes with motion controllers, which we support. Our game itself works kind of really nicely with just a regular 360 controller. It's been made with that in mind. But you can play it with the motion controllers. So instead of the sword being on the buttons, it's actually in your hand and you swing it around. And that's kind of cool. I don't know if it's the best way to play it. It's certainly not superior to just playing it with a regular pad, but it's kind of cool to do it. And the PlayStation's the same, that's got a motion controller. I think as games develop, it's kind of always beneficial to develop a particular system in a particular way. So the game's made from the ground up. But I think you're going to see more games supporting a lot of different ways of playing VR games. And certainly the more people you can cater to, the more, you know, flexible you are with what you're offering, then, you know, potentially the more people are going to play it, hopefully.
Right, so when your game is released, will you be supporting any sort of mods? And do you think there'll be some sort of issue with trying to implement their mods into VR?
So the game works 2D or VR. We got a 2D option you can play it without. That works just as well. As far as mods go, we've got a level editor built in. So you can make your own levels using exactly the same toolkit set we use to make ours. And you can share them. You can put them on Steamworks. You can, in theory, we haven't got there yet, but as soon as we do, you will be able to share them with a lot of other people. But mods themselves, actually adding your own content, we haven't quite got to the stage of supporting anything like that. I think we're still in the process of adding our own content, things like that, and it's quite a big ask to. It's kind of a difficult one. I mean, in theory, it should be simple to do tile sets, but it's not so straightforward because there's a lot of the way it's all put together is quite complicated to explain, but it's kind of grid-based, and to create a grid tile is not so straightforward as to simply just add in new textures. So maybe in the future we'll consider a way to add in your own content. Maybe for a sequel we'll build that in from the start. Certainly not now. It's not something we can really work for, but the level editor I think should hopefully be something people have fun with. At least, you know, maybe make a challenge level for their friends or that kind of thing.
That's great. So when's your game release and where can we see it?
So it's currently on early access. You can play it now on Steam, but we're looking to release in November, and people will be able to, you know, play the game that is on early access. It's the same game, obviously, but we're adding content all the time and updating it all the time. So by November, the game that is finally released will be there in its entirety, and, you know, like, I think we're looking at about 6 hours of content, 3 different acts, and each act is kind of a different storyline, different style coming through and things like that. But, you know, there's fighting and monsters and all kinds of good times to be had.
Okay, thank you very much for your time, sir. Okay.